If you'd like to create areas in your game where if the player enters them, they'll take damage, then keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Welcome to Roblox Snippets. To create the example that's shown in the at the beginning of the video, we're going to start off by creating two parts in the workspace. So if you come over and click on workspace and add a part in, and this part we'll just scale it up sort of so that it's big enough for our character to walk into, because this is going to represent a region where the player will enter. So once you've sort of got a block like this, first thing we'll do is just come down and turn on anchored so that it stays where we put it, and we're going to uncheck can collide so that the player can walk into it. Then come back up to the top, and this first one we're going to call this cold region. Right, and to represent something cold, let's pick a blue type color, and then come down to the transparency and set it to around 0.6 or a bit higher, just so that it's a bit translucent and we can see when the player runs into it. Right, so when you've got a part that looks like this, we're going to duplicate this part and then come up to move and just shift it across to the right, and we're going to change the name of this to be the hot region and represent hot. We'll come down and we'll change the brick color, not just the color, we'll just change the brick color to red, and that will represent our two regions. So this one will be cold, this one will be hot, and make sure they're named exactly the same as what I've got here so that it will fit with the code. The other thing that we'll make use of is a piece of music that will play when you enter the cold region, and a piece of music that will play, a different piece that will play when you enter the hot region. So to get those bits of music, initially just click on your workspace, then come up to Toolbox, and over here in Marketplace, just on the drop down, make sure you choose Audio, and then you can come in here and pick whatever you like. Okay, so spend some time, you can pause the video and spend some time to get something that suits, but just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to pick, say, this test here. Okay, and when I click on test, it's going to ask me to insert it into the game, so into the workspace. So I'm just going to insert into the workspace here. Alright, now let's say I'd pick this for our cold region. I want you to name that, rename this to the same as what this is. So this particular piece here will be cold region. Alright, so that they match. And we're going to do the same thing for the hot region. So regardless of what this is called in here, alright, and see how it's inserted in here? We want them to be separate, so make sure they're up like this. Just click on it and change these to be hot region. Right, so we've got two pieces, hot and cold region, of music that we're going to make use of. Once you have these two pieces of music named like this, select both of them and then right click and cut those, and we've got to put them straight into here. Down at the bottom you'll find sound service, so left click on sound service and right click and paste into. And then we've got our music ready to go when we get to this. You can also then just close this window over here and we are good to go. At the end of the video, we'll look at how to do the ice cap mount and the volcano in here, which is using the toolkit again. However, just for now, to make it operational, this is all we need. We've got our two sounds and we've got our two regions. So we're going to place these two regions here in a folder. So come up to workspace and click on plus and choose folder, and we'll rename this to be all regions, and just drag the cold region and the hot region inside of this folder, because we'll be running a loop that will run through these to check whether a player is within these regions using region 3. Alright, now we're going to run all this from a local script, and we'll place that local script down the bottom here. So if you come down to starter player and expand that, and we're going to place it into the starter character script. So click on the plus and add a local script, and we can rename this to, well, we can just call it Region 3 local, just so we know where we're working. The example at the beginning of the video shows that we will have music play when you run into the region, and we're also going to do damage to the character. So we'll need some variables to work with within our local script. So to begin with, we'll get rid of our print up here, and we'll get access to the players service. So capital P with players, and then game, get service, and inside here players. We're also going to make use of the run service. So local RS, short for run service, and game get service, and inverted commas, and we'll type in run service. And the other one that we're going to use, where we put our sounds, is the sound service. So local SS for sound service, game get service, and our sound service. If you've never used services before, or you don't really understand what they do, within Roblox Studio there are built-in functions, and these are collections of those functions. So run service has a built-in collection of little functions or called methods that help us achieve certain things within our projects. Just like sound service obviously deals with audio, and it's specific to that. So that's what services do. They provide you with special built-in methods or functions that help you achieve what it is you want to do. Well worth learning what they are if you want to build your own projects later. Right, so we've got our services. The next thing we'll do is get our actual player. So player and will be equal to, and we've already got the player's service, and then we want the local player because we're using a local script, so we're getting the local player. Then we'll get the that player's character, so a local character, we'll just char for short, equals player dot character, and we'll go character added. Then we'll place an or, player dot character added, sorry, just character added, and we'll place a weight at the end. So the reason this happens is because when we use a local script, there's no guarantee that this script will be loaded in a specific order. So if we have things in the workspace like these parts that this script relies on, if they load out of order, there's a chance that if it hasn't completely loaded our character, then the script may error. And this helps us ensure that we have the character before we try to do anything with it. Right, now just below this, we're going to create two other variables that we'll make use of a little bit later. The first one is in region. We're going to set this to false. So when a character is inside of one of these regions, we'll change this to true, which will allow some code to run. And when they leave the region, we'll set this back to false. Okay? And just below this, local can damage. And we're going to set this to true. So when the player enters into the region, we're going to set this, it will be set to true, so we're damaging the player. However, the method that we're using to do that, we're using the run service. It runs very, very quickly, and what we're going to do is space out or change when the player gets damaged, because if we didn't have some method of controlling it, then the player would die immediately because they just take a lot of damage. And you'll see how that works very shortly. So everything we're going to do for this script will be inside of our run service. So type rs and then a dot and rendered step. And this will run, if you noticed when I typed rendered step there, every frame, alright? So every frame prior to the frame being rendered. So if your game is running at 30 or 60 frames a second, that's how often this will run. And we're going to connect a function to this with a set of brackets and then just hit enter. And we're going to enter all of our code inside of this function. Now you remember, and I'll show you here, in the Explorer window we put all of our regions inside of this all regions folder, and we want to effectively loop through these two regions, although you could have many more, but loop through these every frame and check whether there is a player within one of these regions. So to do that, we will create a for loop. So for, and then we'll put underscore, which basically means for however many there are items there are in the loop. So we're not making use of that. Each region, so as it loops through, it will go to this one and then this one, and that's what this will represent in pairs. And now we need to get or create a table of these parts, and because we're in a local script, we're going to do this by accessing the workspace directly by saying game.workspace.all regions, the name of the folder, and I'll get rid of this window over here so you can see. And once we've got that folder, we're going to use get children and just move outside here and hit do, and that is our for loop. So now this loop will run through each frame through our parts and check whether there's players in it. Now we need to define those parts as regions so that we can check. And this is a relatively new way of using Region 3. It's sort of changed a little bit from the old way as some of the methods became depreciated. So this is a bit of a new way that uses parameters and raycast filter types. So you'll see as we move down the list. So firstly, we'll create a variable for region, and we need to define what that region is. And we do it by typing region3.new, and in here it's going to ask us for what, if you have a look in the helper text, the minimum, vector 3, and the max. And there's a calculation that we do that will work this out for us. So it is each region, right, dot position, and then minus, then a set of brackets, and we're going to say each region dot size divided by 2. Then we're going to move just outside of that and put a comma. And what I would like you to do now is to take a copy of everything we just wrote there. So highlight that and then Control or Command C, or you can right click on it and pick copy, and then just after the comma, paste that in, and we're going to change just the minus sign here to be a plus. Okay, so you should have each region dot position minus each region size divided by 2, and the same thing plus this one over here. Alright, very big long line, but that will create the region that we're going to work with. Alright, and I'll just move out there and hit enter. And as I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ensure that in region is set to false each time this runs through. That way, if the player has left the region, it will set it to false and none of the code down below will run. Now that we've created the region, we want to create some parameters that will help us work out whether a character is inside that region. So we'll create a variable called params, and it will be equal to overlap params dot new. So this effectively returns a table, and we're going to add a couple of things into this table by saying params dot filter type equals, and we'll use enum. These are built-in variables that are controlled within Roblox Studio. So enum dot raycast filter type dot include. So we're going to say what things are going to be included into these parameters. So params, now we're going to say filter descendant instances, alright, equals, and it expects a table, and what we're going to pass in here will be our character. So we'll just put in here character. Now descendant instances means it will look at all of the parts inside of the character and include those into this table as things that we care about when we want to say yes, a character is inside of the region. So now what we'll do is create another variable here called parts, and in the workspace we're going to get part bounds in box. Now if you have a look at the helper text here, it's asking us for 3 items: the C-frame, the size, and the thing that we just created, our params here. So, and we are particularly interested in the region that we just created. So the first one down in here will be our region.cframe, right, and then a comma, the region.size, and then comma, and the params that we just created. Okay, and that will create the box and that we're going to look at, or that this will look at when it's comparing what is inside of the region that we created. All right, it's a little bit wordy and etc., but trust me, it will work very well for us. So now that we have that information, we want to run through and check that anything that is a descendant of the character, all right, if it finds anything like that, we're going to set in region up here to true. So we'll run another for loop in here, so it will be for, and then a space and underscore, comma, and we'll say each part, so we're looking at each part in parts do. So we're looking through any part that is inside of this table created here, and we're going to see if that is a descendant of the character by saying if each part, all right, colon, is descendant of, and inside here we want to know if it's a descendant of the character. Then we're going to set in region will be equal to true, and in this case we will break. Now if you've never seen break used, it effectively stops the loop or breaks us out of this for loop here. It says, okay, we found what we're looking for, we've set this to true, don't worry about doing anything else, and move on to the next part of the code. All right, and in that case, now if this is not true, we'll just say else continue, which is another keyword. So if it's running round and round and it hasn't found any character parts, it will just continue on through the rest of the code until it does find something. All right, now we've got a few ends here, so just moving down, we've got one end here which is for this one and for this for. So at the end of this for loop here, just come down and hit enter a couple of times. All right, so you should have an end and an end with a bracket. Now that we've, this part up here has effectively said yes there is a character or no there isn't. All right, so now down the bottom here, what we want to do is, if there is a character, determine what's going to happen. So let's say if in region, so that is if there is a character inside the region, then we're going to run whatever code is in here. All right, so the first thing we'll do is we'll create some variables just above here to deal with what we want to do. We want to do some damage, and we also want to play some music and things. So we need to have those ready to go each time when we find a character in the region. Now, if you want to, as you've seen up here, if we have a look, we've got cold region, hot region. If you want to create different regions and you want to have them doing the same sort of things, then we're going to make use of attributes, and this way, this code, you won't have to keep rewriting the code once you use attributes. Now if you haven't used them before, come over to our all regions over here and click on the cold region for a start, and you'll need your properties window open, and scroll right down the bottom, and we're going to add some attributes right at the bottom to this part, and they're just like variables. So go ahead and click on the plus sign, and the first one that we're going to put in here will be called damage amount. All right, and this is going to be a number, so we'll click the type down here and we'll set the number, set it to number, and click save, and you'll see we have a damage amount with a 0 next to it. So we're going to set the amount of damage we're going to do to our player to 5, and you can change this later if you like, but just give it a go for a start. So damage amount will be 5, and now we're going to add some other attributes as well. So click on the plus again, and the second one will be damage rate, and it also will be a number value, and the rate down here, sorry, we need to add it, we'll set this to be 2. Okay, and you'll see how this works shortly. And now we're going to give the player a message as well. So add in here region message, and it will be a string because we're going to type a message in here. So let's click on save, and in this box, this is our cold region, so we're going to say it's cold, and you can say put a jacket on. Alright, and you can make that message whatever you like in there, and probably as long as you want as well. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add the region name in here as well. So attribute and region name, and leave it as a string, and then make sure it's exactly the same as what we put up the top here, so cold region. Alright, now these regions down here, or these attributes, need to also be applied to the hot region. So if you wanted to delete your hot region there at the moment, and simply right click on this one and duplicate our cold one, move it over, all we need to do is change this to be hot region again, and change its color to be red, and then we can scroll down to our attributes at the bottom, and we need to change our message saying it's hot, or it's too hot, drink a heat potion or something like that, just to give the player some instructions. And obviously we need to change our attribute to hot region down the bottom. Alright, so we've got 2 with these different attributes inside. Now you don't have to leave the numbers the same. For instance, you might say in the hot region, let's change let's change the damage amount in the hot region to be 10, and we're going to damage them quicker at 1. Alright, now once we've written the code and finished with these, you can come back and play with them as you wish. So let's come back to our script now, and we'll just click on save there, and now we need to write some variables in here to get a hold of that information inside of each of these regions. And we'll do that by saying local DMG rate, so we'll get the rate first of each region, and get attribute and damage rate. So it has to be exactly what is down here. So if you have this here, make sure it's exactly written as it is here. And we're going to create the variables for the others. So damage amount, right, will be equal to each region, get attribute, and this one will be damage amount, and then this message, so this message will be each region, get attribute, and we'll say region message, and the name, this region name, each region get attribute and region name. And now we need one just for the music. So music, which will be whatever music for the region, will be equal to sound service, and then we are going to wait for child to make sure that it loads, and then we just put in here this region name that we created above, and that way whichever region has been triggered, then the right music will play. Okay, and that's why we used our attributes. So you don't have to change your code, but you can change what's in here and it will work perfectly. Now that we have that inside, when we have this player in here, the first thing we're going to do is to check whether music is playing. So we say if not music dot is playing, then, so the music is not playing, then we're going to play the music. And I'm going to also change the volume. You don't have to do this, but I'll just make it a little bit quieter so it doesn't overpower us when we test it. And music with a colon and play. And that will play our music. Now outside of that conditional statement, so if and then n, and we're just below that, we're going to say if each region.name, so that is the one that we are looping through, equals this region name, so they match, we're going to simply print this message. So it will print the correct message depending on which region it is. Alright, so now once again we'll move down, and I'll just put a line between these just to show they are separate, so you're not putting them inside, they are separate. This one, now this will deal with our damage. So if can damage, which we said that is the case when this loops initially, we'll immediately set can damage equal to false. Then we're going to get our character that we want to do the damage to. So that will be character, and then we're going to say wait for child, and we're looking for the character's humanoid because that's how we do the damage. And then we can say colon take damage, and in here we're going to put our damage amount. So that is how much damage will be done that we created up above. I'll just get rid of these so you can see clearly. Now, because remember this is running every frame, we want to slow it down. So we're going to say task.wait in here, damage rate. So this is how long it will wait before it will do more damage to the character if they are still inside the region. So then we can just set can damage back to true. Okay? And there's just one other thing that we need to do, and that is just below, so we've written this one here, just below this last, so just drop down a line and type else, music, stop. Alright, and if you look at what this is connected to, if in region, so if the player, if there's no one in region, so this is false, it's going to stop any music that is playing. Alright, and that is just about everything we need to give this a test. So come up here and make sure you click on File and Save, and just in the view over here, make sure your output window is displaying down the bottom. We can see any errors, and our messages display as well. And then come up the top and we're going to click on Play. Alright, let's run in now. There we go. And no errors, and you can probably hear the music playing in the background, the message is being shown down the bottom, and then if I leave the area, we have our music stop. And if I come over here now, I'm in the hot area, and you'll notice up the top here, you'll see that we are indeed taking damage while we're in the hot region. And if I leave, alright, it'll start to repair me. Back to the cold, you'll notice that I am taking damage up here as well, but probably not quite as quick. Alright, so I'll stop that there. Now I am sorry about all the errors, however, very quickly showing you, and you can have a quick look and see how to fix those and identify them, is very useful when you're learning to code. So I hope you do get some benefit out of that. The last thing that we're going to do is simply have a look at adding in our toolbox. If we come up to our toolbox, you can come in over here and click models, and then search for ice mountain, perhaps. And you can come in and find one in here that will meet your needs. Now, when you are using things out of the toolbox, then make sure you try to pick one that doesn't have scripts inside of it, okay? So I might put in here, say, ice cap. this might give us a bit of a better sort of look at getting our ice-capped mountain there. The one that I used in here, I'll just have a quick check to see what it was called. I think it was called Snowy Mountain. So Snowy Mountain. Right, so here's one here. I think that might have been the one that I used, but if you come up and you click on workspace and then simply add that into your workspace, you will get your snowy mountain that you can put in. So we can then move that around a bit. So perhaps just in front here and over there, and maybe move it down so it's just on the ground. And now all we did, you want to say, okay, well, it's okay to run up the mountain. Once you get into the snow, that's where you want your region. So what you do is you would take your region here and move it over and up to represent just the snowy part at the top up here. So if you look up on the top and move it over and then resize it a bit, so scale it out this way a bit and over here, and we can just spin around that way. So that might be, okay. You can continue to play around with that, and you may want to just make it higher so players don't jump out of it, and that will be the area where the player will take damage. And then what you would do then is come down and change your transparency to be 1, and it will completely disappear. And you can do the same thing with the volcano. I won't do that one, but if we play this now, right, we can run into our hot zone, and it's very hot. Alright, drink a heat potion, and we can check our ice. Alright, we get up into the mountains, and there we go. It's asking us to put a jacket on. We're taking damage, and that's how we're using our Region 3s. I hope you have enjoyed that video and got a lot out of it. I'm sure you can come up with lots of ways to make use of this, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.